I was the unseen architect of this multi-million-dollar data empire. My brother, the CEO, called me operational and relegated me to employee wellness. He never bothered to ask how the servers stayed alive. So, when he fired me, I left him the one thing he didn't recognize, a tarnished brass key. It wasn't just metal. It was the physical twin to the Custodian Protocol, the failsafe that made his entire company go surgically silent. Now he's begging for access, and I'm ready to sell it to his biggest competitor. Welcome to Karma Chronicles, your ultimate destination for thrilling revenge stories, where corporate hubris always meets its match. If you believe in structural justice, hit that subscribe button and share this story. I knew something was fundamentally wrong the second Trent Holloway's executive assistant, a woman who generally wouldn't dare make eye contact without a Slack notification, popped her chewing gum and tossed a command over her acrylic nails. "Your brother wants to see you. Like now." "No, please. No, Miss Holloway. Just a chewed-up demand floating in the sterile air." I walked past the framed article that once called me the unseen architect of the Holloway framework. I walked past the original server blueprints I had hand-drawn back in 2011, their margins still tattooed with faded coffee stains from countless sleepless nights, and I walked straight into the conference room where my little brother Trent sat in our late father's chair like he had earned it. Spoiler alert, he hadn't. Trent had that unmistakable MBA glow, a new suit, empty eyes, and a PowerPoint open on a tablet he couldn't even manage to keep charged. He looked like a guy about to sell me a gym membership. "Anya," he began, using my formal name, Dr. Anya Holloway, as if the title was now a liability. "We need to pivot. You're not strategic enough anymore. We need visionary thinkers at the helm. You're operational, maintenance. You're better suited for people initiatives, culture stuff, employee wellness, vibes, Anya, vibes. This entire empire, this towering structure of data, logic, and client trust was built on my insomnia and server-side duct tape, and now I was being exiled to pass out branded yoga mats. You want me to measure feelings?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to get out of the way," he replied, finally dropping the corporate pleasantries. The shovel full of corporate dirt had just been used to bury me quietly. I looked at him, this man who still called me to ask what the acronym VPN stood for, and realized he actually thought he won something. He viewed me as a golden goose he'd just duct-taped to a rocket and launched. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't remind him who had personally patched our systems during Hurricane Gloria from a flea-bitten motel Wi-Fi, using a laptop missing the S key. I simply stood up, walked back to my office, and began packing. It took me 7 minutes. My life, my 15-year tenure, fit into a single filing box and a backup drive. I left the framed photo of Dad and me wiring the first server cage, a small, tangible piece of history he would need as a souvenir when this place inevitably caught fire. Then, from the back of the third credenza drawer, under a tangle of old Cat 5 cables and a stress ball shaped like a brain, I pulled it out, a tarnished, heavy brass key with a red tag so faded it looked pink. No label, no note, just cold, heavy, and permanent. I placed it directly on Trent's polished desk without a single word. As I walked out of the office for the last time, I heard him call out, "Anya, what is this for?" Like a clueless kid finding an antique in a museum. I didn't turn around. I let him guess. Trent thought he had successfully pushed me out of my own kingdom. All he had really done was unlock a door he didn't even know existed. The key was never the point. The key was the fuse. The new era came in like a high-end car commercial, loud, shiny, and utterly useless when the snow hit. Trent's caravan of visionary infrastructure consultants, skinny suits with confidence too big for the building, were all bloatware and buzzwords. Their first act of brilliance? Scrapping the legacy systems I had spent 15 years reinforcing. Too old school, they declared. We need elastic scalability. Translation: burn the solid concrete foundation to build a foam castle. They dismantled my team. Harold, my lead sysadmin, who could spin up a backup node blindfolded, was reassigned to employee engagement, hosting weekly Zoom trivia nights. I didn't protest, I didn't warn, I just watched, made meticulous notes, logged everything. There is a type of silence people forget to fear, the kind that doesn't scream or negotiate, the kind that just remembers. They changed the core IP schema without verifying subnet permissions. They migrated our internal routing table to a cloud interface that couldn't recognize half the original MAC addresses. One arrogant consultant, Bryce, confidently deleted a deprecated file labeled root router map final actual. XML and high-fived his colleague. They didn't understand the core routing logic because I had buried our critical failsafes behind layers of legacy scripts that only the architect would recognize. Then, I checked an old Git backup from 2013 and saw it. Control Layer Zeta. A buried routine nested inside the fallback pathing stack. I had built it as a silent sentinel. When a junior IT tech tried to modify something basic in the cron scheduler, a system alert popped up. System flagged change as potential custodian violation, escalation logged. The CTO, a crypto bro with a LinkedIn full of self-congratulatory acronyms, replied to the technician's panicked screenshot with a simple thumbs-up emoji. No one traced the log. No one cross-checked the file name with the physical storage manifest, but I did. I still had admin shadow access to the back-end terminal, quiet as a ghost. I watched them trip line after line. I pulled a binder from my home filing cabinet, labeled Licensing Agreements 2012 to 2013. Buried inside was the clause, Failover Reversion Rights, Custodian Class Y. It was written in legalese so dry it could crack lips. In the event of unauthorized modification to Class 1 infrastructure by a non-custodian actor, all system-level administrative rights shall revert to the custodian of record. That custodian of record, that would be me, Dr. Anya Holloway. Trent, the CEO, barely understood how to change a printer cartridge. Now he was elbow-deep in a system whose foundations were rigged like a condemned building in a spy movie. The slow bleed began with timestamps. A high-value client in Munich noticed their activity logs were drifting 6 minutes into the future, a critical error for global logistics. Then, Tokyo flagged a spike in failed API calls. A UK finance client got booted with an error reading, custodian check-in required. The new CTO dismissed it as a localization bug, then went to a spin class. The building wasn't shaking, it was remembering. My old load balancer, built in 2014, was still wired to a heartbeat ping that triggered every 6 hours. It was failing, not crashing, just stuttering, like it was hesitating, like it remembered who it used to report to. Then came the call from Mistral Ventures, a logistics conglomerate and one of our crown jewel clients. Trent took the video call standing, his shirt starched, his confidence forced. The Mistral rep didn't yell. He simply stated calmly, "If your platform can't stabilize by next quarter, we'll have no choice but to explore alternative providers." Trent fed him buzzwords. What mattered was the security audit that followed. Buried in the logs was a recurring pattern, a credential pinging, triggering test pings, and accessing subdirectories that didn't technically exist anymore. The credential ID, RML, Custodian 0. RML, Rebecca Marie Holloway, my full name. They tried to delete it. They couldn't. Trent was furious. Legal whispered words like audit liability, but the system didn't want patches. It wanted permission. At exactly 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, right as Trent was preparing to live stream a vision alignment breakfast with some useless LinkedIn influencer, it happened. The data center flatlined. No warning, no countdown, no thunderclap, Just instant, surgical silence. Slack channels froze mid-message. Calendar invites vanished. Internal comms went dark. Client dashboards threw up error messages like a broken Vegas slot machine. Their most sensitive operational environment folded in on itself like someone had pulled its soul through a straw. Trent turned to the nearest intern and yelled, "Reboot the mainframe!" There was no mainframe. It started yelling across the floor. Devs ran like startled bees. "Why isn't the failover kicking in?" someone screamed. There was no failover. They'd stripped it out for modern efficiency. Meanwhile, Trent finally noticed it, still sitting on his desk. Tarnished, mute, unblinking. The key. The one I had left behind 2 weeks ago. He grabbed it and stormed down the hallway, throwing open the glass doors to legal. He slammed the key onto the table. "Explain this." Mr. Davies, the oldest lawyer in the department who still used a fountain pen, looked up, his eyes fixed on the key. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just stared. "Harris?" Trent snapped, using the old lawyer's familiar name. Mr. Davies finally reached out, slowly, like he was touching the past. He picked up the key, turned it over, and turned pale, full ghost mode. "This," he said, barely above a whisper, "is from the 2010 schematic. Rebecca built the original vault with this key. It's the physical override for the first server cage." Trent's bravado dissolved. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," Mr. Davies said slowly, walking to the filing wall and pulling out a red-labeled cracked binder, "you didn't just lose access. You violated the Custodian Covenant." The binder's cover read, "Sysroot Escrow, Custodian Protocol 2010, Holloway Systems." Mr. Davies cleared his throat, his voice trembling as he read aloud. "Clause 7C. In the event of non-approved architectural modification to any Class Y subsystem, without custodian sign-off, all controlling systems shall revert to custodian oversight." "So she booby-trapped it?" one board member finally whispered. "No," Mr. Davies said. "She protected it." Behind the clause was a series of proprietary licensing records. My name, Rebecca Marie Holloway, listed as the sole license holder for a core module labeled CRL v.1.0, Core Routing Logic, Custodian Only. The description was short but devastating, required for all mission-critical operations, cannot be replicated, sublicensed, or forked without custodian signature and biometric authorization. Translation: I owned the spine. Trent hadn't just lost access. He had violated a covenant, burned a bridge, and now the company wasn't just offline. It had reverted to its architect. The emergency board meeting was called within the hour. Trent sat at the head of the table like a dethroned prom king. The key lay in front of him, untouched, a cursed artifact. I walked in without fanfare. No dramatic entrance, no flanked lawyers. Just me, in the same neutral blazer I wore when I mapped the first server room, holding one thing, a manila folder with no logo, no label, and quiet, weighted intent. I placed the folder directly in front of the chairman, Lowell. When he saw the words "offer terms" typed in all caps, he looked up at me like he finally understood what century it was. "You didn't return my calls," Trent snapped. "No," I said, still not looking at him. "It's not personal. That's why it's working." Lowell opened the folder. Inside was a single typed page with 2 columns. Column A, relicensing terms. Column B, refusal to engage. Column A, relicense terms under my newly formed LLC, Custody Logic Systems. 5-year contract, escalating annual fees. Full technical oversight reverts to me and my team. Trent Holloway resigns as CEO, effective immediately. Column B, refusal to engage, in which case Custody Logic is free to accept acquisition terms from Apex Dine. Apex Dine, our fiercest competitor, had been offering triple the licensing value in exchange for exclusive access to my core routing logic. The board read it like scripture. The CFO, Rajani, looked up. "Why now, Dr. Holloway?" "Because I was told I wasn't strategic." I met her gaze. "This is what strategy looks like." Trent finally erupted, his voice shaking. "This is insane. You're seriously going to let her gut the company because of some antique contract clause? She's my sister, for God's sake." The word family hung in the air like a bad smell. The chairman, Lowell, finally intervened, his voice heavy with authority. "Trent, you violated the Custodian Protocol. Your restructuring breached a binding legal agreement. That alone is grounds for executive dismissal. Add to that the IP exposure, system downtime, client loss risk, and the looming acquisition threat." He paused. "You didn't just burn the bridge. You bulldozed the land it stood on." Rajani confirmed the numbers. "If we accept Dr. Holloway's offer, we retain core functionality and 70% of clients. If we reject it and Apex Dine moves forward, projected losses exceed $200 million in under 6 months. The number landed like a steel door slamming shut. "I'm calling a vote," the chairman announced. 5 hands went up, one after another. "Motion carries," Lowell stated. "Effective immediately, Trent Holloway is removed as CEO." He looked at me. "Miss Holloway, concerning the CEO position." I held up a hand. Quiet. "I don't want his chair, Lowell." A few surprised looks flickered around the table. This was never about the title. I don't need a title to control the architecture. I just need signatures. I pushed the folder containing the signed Option A agreement across the table. Licensing rate will be 5 times the original structure. Access is read-only unless explicitly elevated. All administrative keys route through me. I stood, smoothed my jacket, and gathered my folder. Trent was still seated, eyes locked on me, his tailor-made suit now just the empty shell of a boy who finally realized the game was real, and he'd never read the rules. On my way out, Mr. Davies, the old lawyer, reached into his briefcase. He pulled out the envelope I'd left weeks ago. The brass key was tucked inside. Quietly, reverently, he sealed it shut and slid it into a drawer. The empire didn't fall today. It just changed hands. Quietly, completely. My phone buzzed in the elevator. An email from Apex Dine. "We're prepared to meet your terms in full. Let us know how you'd like to proceed." I smiled. Just barely. Not because I needed their offer, but because now I had choices. The system remembers who built it, even if the people forget.